Hello, Internet! Well, I'm back on the air again. Usually it would be pretty pricey to get this sort of thing up and running, which is why I only did it once. But this time I've got some financial backing thanks to this new game. Looks pretty viable. Making a video game isn't easy. You have to come up with a concept, make all the assets for it, program every individual mechanic, and test the whole thing to make sure it's not completely broken. And that's only the first part of it. If you want to make any money off of your game, you have to not only get it distributed, but also convince people to buy it. There are plenty of ways to do this, from simple magazine prints to massive events, but let's talk about screens. Yes, TV commercials for video games. They've been around for as long as game consoles themselves, first appearing on the air with the Magnavox Odyssey. This first one was a fairly standard introduction to the system and the concept of video games in general. The only thing really notable about it is
to create a closed-circuit electronic playground.
The third grade music class they got to make the background track. When the Atari 2600 came around, things got a bit more fun. The actors were more visually excited to play the games, maybe a bit too excited, and a little jingle was created to wrap up the commercials.
Have you played Atari today?
I think so, yeah. The commercials I enjoyed the most from this era are the ones that recreate the games in live action, like Spider-Man or Mario Brothers. Seeing this level of effort go into advertising video games at the time was really admirable. Once other consoles started showing up, it became a lot trickier to differentiate them, so a lot of commercials started focusing on that. The fact that the ColecoVision had an Atari 2600 adapter haunts me to this day. After the market for game consoles completely crashed, it was almost impossible to market them. Some companies went with the computer angle to make them seem more valuable, but Nintendo entered the fray with plastic. Yes, in the early days of the NES it was marketed as a cool new toy, placing emphasis on Rob the Robot and the Zapper light gun. The commercials made it feel otherworldly, going so far as to launch a house into orbit. They didn't actually advertise any specific games until The Legend of Zelda, and they did so with this.
Zelda! After rocks!
Which way to go?
And this.
It's The Legend of Zelda, and it's really rad. Those creatures from Ganon are pretty bad. Octoroks, Tektites, Levers too. But with your help, our hero pulls through.
Would you believe me if I told you this wasn't the only time they used a rap to advertise Zelda? Some commercials didn't even show footage of the game, like with Crystalis or Dragon Spirit the New Legend, the latter featuring this little dragon puppet that's honestly really cute. And sometimes they didn't have anything to do with the game. Sure, the original Game Boy commercial was really cool with this armored guy and caverns, but what does this have to do with Tetris? But then we enter the 90s. Not only was it the time of a radical attitude, but it was also the height of the console wars, and those two mixed together to create...
Why can't it be more like that nice boy Mario?
Oh! Little brat!
that. Everybody remembers Genesis doing what Nintendo don't, but other companies got into the fray as well, with Crash Bandicoot showing up to Nintendo HQ, or the SNES and Genesis being called toys compared to the Panasonic 3DO. The what? Honestly, it is pretty funny to see commercials that were so confident about their games or systems being popular when they ended up not being that. It really shows how unpredictable the video game market was. Heck, some of these commercials make me want the product less. There's a lot of gross stuff in some of these, and I guess it was seen as cool back in the 90s, but now I honestly can't stomach it. And it was only really like that over here. If you compare the commercials to the ones from Japan, they're a lot of fun with full 2D animation and some genuinely beautiful moments you wouldn't expect from an ad. Not that it stopped the 2000s from being even stranger. Just look at these commercials for the PS2 and especially the PS3. I genuinely have no words to describe what I'm watching. And I think they kinda burned themselves out during that decade because we never really saw anything like that again. Sure, there were a few outliers, such as Mighty No. 9,
and make the bad guys cry like an anime fan on prom night.
but most of the commercials from this point on were pretty basic. You have some people playing games in various scenarios, or just footage of the games, and that's it. They still do a decent job of selling games, but it sometimes feels like something was lost in terms of creativity. At the very least, some indie games try to replicate the classics in their trailers, and you can tell it was done out of passion. Video game commercials have had a pretty wild evolution throughout the years, even if at the end of the day they more or less all boil down to... please buy it.